Hello. So welcome to non-Euclidean software delivery. And I'm, in fact, so eager to tell you exactly what this way of delivering software is. I'm just going to spoil the entire talk right away. And I'll tell you immediately that it's about XP, extreme programming. And more specifically, it's about my personal experience with extreme programming. And it's really XP-ish, because it's how it's interpreted by my team rather than the theory. So, nobody ever gets things perfect. So that's why I'm just going to add like the ish. And what is extreme programming, if you haven't heard? It's a style of software development focusing on application of programming techniques, clear communication, and teamwork. And the goal of XP is outstanding software development. Outstanding. I really like that word. I'm really interested. XP. And my personal journey with XP started from this email. And it came kind of at a time where I was ready to make a change, and I was really asking what I wanted to do next. And I received this email, and looking for a person who shows interest in working as a team. Okay, check. Remote working. Okay, that sounds good. Never done it, but very happy to try it. Participating in our continuous learning. Software craftsmanship and XP. Great, because I really like the word craftsmanship in there. And then, Haskell, etc. Haskell, okay, I'm in. And, not required to be an expert. The objective is to learn together. And the tech stack is not defined, so you will all be deciding the tech stack together. And I really love this email as a recruitment email, because it's so non-threatening. It's like, hey, you don't actually have to know anything. Just come, learn, and by the way, you'll be doing all these cool things. And it's the word craftsmanship that really jumps out at me in there, because I really love the idea of software as a craft. So this is how my journey started. And so today, I'm part of a crafts XP team. And it's a distributed mob team, and we'll talk about what that means. And we're building a large application on top of a private blockchain. More specifically, it has to do with putting the mortgage servicing industry in the US on blockchain. And just to explain that a little bit, when people purchase homes, or for example, they take out loans from banks, and so the idea is to manage these loans on blockchain, and that's what we're doing. And that's my experience with XP. I read parts of this book last week, and then I did 6 months on this XP team, XP-ish. And so, obviously, I'm not an expert. And so you might wonder, why should you even be here? Lunch was good, the weather's nice, maybe you want to take a nap, maybe you want to take a walk. Totally get it. And let me try to convince you. I think that what's really exciting about this is that this is theory and practice. XP has been around since the 90s. And take mental inventory. How many XP teams do you guys know or have you heard of? In my 10 years, the one I'm on, that was my first. So it seems like everybody has heard of it, or people have heard of it over the years. And nobody's really doing it, or not that many people are doing it. And we are actually doing it. So that's one. This is from in the trenches. Then I do have 10 years of other experience. So I've seen the spread of different size companies, different industries. I've seen waterfall. I've seen Scrum. So I did dev. I did DevOps. So when I saw this, at that point, I already had a basis for comparison. I had something to compare to. And blockchain, while is mostly unrelated to anything in this talk, I would like to throw it in there because it's the hype word of the day, so it makes things more exciting, so there you have it. And then when I talked about the non-Euclidean part, I really like this quote. A non-Euclidean geometry is a rethinking and redescription of properties like points, lines, and other shapes of the flat world. And when I came across XP, my impression of it was this rethinking and redescription of points, lines, and shapes of software development, which is kind of crazy because it's been around since the 90s. But it really was that different for me that it really felt that way. And so good news, we're done with the definitions. I'm not going to put up any more quotes. And the way I want to kind of talk to you about XP is the way that I discovered it, I don't want to tell you like what it is, and I just want to tell you a story and kind of discover it together incrementally, and then maybe just tie it back to the official XP practices later once you have a little bit of context, just how I did it. And I want to specifically talk about the parts that were really surprising to me, and hopefully that you'll agree that maybe hopefully they'll be surprising to you too. And today's XP story is how we delivered a demo in 3 months. So we had these 3 little periods called milestones. They were 3 weeks long, 2 weeks at the end for like a little bit of slack. And we had to deliver a demo. The code base was in place, but it was very light. The infrastructure was in place, but also light. And that was our task, deliver a working slice of the system in 3 months. And for like our breadcrumb feature, we'll talk about loan search. And I want to present this as team code and practices in the pre-demo world, which is the 3 months, my first 3 months with XP. And the intention of this diagram is that, there's overlap. Obviously, I don't care to talk about the overlap or anything like that. My point is that I'm going to organize this in these 3 categories, and they somehow overlap. And so let's talk about the team. Do you guys like my maps? I drew them myself. France is so big. So our clients are in Florida, and they have the SMEs, the subject matter experts. In New York, we have the headquarters. That's where the product team is, and that's where the blockchain platform is. The development team is in France. That's the smart contract writers, the backend. And the UI and the UX team, the contractors, are in England. So immediately you see that this is a team that is distributed geographically and in time zones. And then if you zoom in on France, that's where the distributed mob team is. And so mobbing is like pairing, but with more people, like pair programming, but with more people with some rules. And I affectionately call this like the collective brain. And so as you see, we're also spread out geographically. I'm in Paris, my colleague's a little bit outside of Paris, and we have somebody in Nantes. And this is what happens when we mob. Every day, I come to work, and I get inside a virtual conference, Zoom, and we open up a shared terminal. We use Tmux, maybe you guys know Screen, as an alternative for that. The editor of somebody's choice is SpaceMax, which keeps us entertained to this day. And we come in and we all sort of like pick a feature off the backlog, for example, like the loan search, and we'll start writing the code together using a timer. And so we'll just be like, okay, first person like write the test, 15 minutes pass, second person maybe continue the test, and we just sort of like go like this, around and around. Maybe sometimes we need to stop and get some context, explain some things, but this is basically the flow. And so this is not like pure mob programming. Pure mob programming has like rules where the keyboard is like the dumb input device, the driver is like the smart input device, the navigators navigate the driver. There's like a procedure that's pretty formalized, and we kind of don't do that. We do this like dojo-style format where we just sort of rotate, we talk. And here was my first big surprise on day 1. So what happens when you come to work and your first job, day 1? You get a computer, probably, and you get like a document that says like, go set yourself up, right? And then you'll go, and we all know what that looks like. It never works. The document is always out of date. You're always like, hey, like, is this my environment? Like, is this an actual issue? Like, do I go talk to somebody about that? You don't want to ask too many dumb questions on your first day, So I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's typically like a very painful part of getting set up at work. And when I came into work in this team, it was everybody got in the room and everybody set up my environment with me. Like, has that ever happened to anybody? Surely never happened to me. And you know what? That was great, because I got set up really quickly, and I didn't care to know like what file was missing, like what account I needed to set up. I have no context on day 1. Like, this information is not useful. So the quicker you get through this, the better. And to me, that was immediately, I was like, wow, this is great. Like, I've never seen this, but I think it's great. And so this is what we do. We do every day. We meet in this like virtual room and we write code together in this sort of fashion. And there are many benefits of mob programming that people will cite. I just wanted to talk about a couple that first came to mind. Like the fact that you have like an instant code review at any time, like you're writing the code. Do you ever notice like how many typos you actually make like the first time you write something? It's pretty crazy. And then somebody's like type spelling, check spelling, and just kind of talking about the design with you, reviewing on the spot. That's great. And then the knowledge sharing, like you were all there. Like you all made the decisions together. You all wrote the same code. One of you goes on vacation tomorrow. That means nothing. Like the work continues. And then we talked in the keynote when the speaker talked about this like information hoarding, right? This is obviously does not happen in this sort of environment. And then, the quick integration of team members, I got up to speed really quickly on everything because I was just with my team the whole time, IRL, and so they were like, well, virtually, and they were giving me all the context I needed, like all of the code walkthroughs, like all the explanations. So it's so easy to get up to speed, and it feels really good to be so functional so quickly. And then the debug superpowers, it's like I like to consider it like rubber duck debugging, except that your duck knows how to code and like knows more stuff than you do, maybe. And so it's very powerful as a tool. In fact, when you just all like a group of you sit around a computer and you all just kind of look at a problem together, and you know what? There have been plenty of times when it really took like all three of us to figure something out. So for me, it was just very effective. And so this, so if we were to tie back to official XP here, there's a value of communication in XP. And the practices are sitting together, pair programming, and shared code. And sitting together, we do that, in a Zoom. And it's the mobbing part that I thought was so surprising to me, because I don't know of very many companies that do this. I've heard of one like yesterday. And the shared code base, I think what we're all used to probably, or many of us, is that there's like somebody who knows this part, somebody that knows that part. If there's a person that knows everything, that's probably like a lead of some kind. And I so love that we all know everything. It's really a great feeling. And sort of what's been my impression of what that's like in general, and sort of a surprise for me too, is that I kind of work more in the sense that I'm more focused for like longer stretches of time. And it's very simple. When you're like sharing a terminal, you're not going to go like on Facebook, you're not going to go on Twitter, you come in, you get in the context right away. I used to start my day by like reading blogs and getting coffee, but here like you just come in and you're working right away, and it just, because this group factor just kind of like, it doesn't force you, but it contributes to you staying engaged for much longer. And there's this sort of degree of exigence that comes with this, because if one of you is tired and you're like, oh, like let's just take a shortcut, like let's just wing it, there will inevitably be somebody else in the group that'll be like, no, like let's do this the right way. Like if we're tired today, like let's do it tomorrow. But like the team will keep the bar, like where they want to keep it. And even if one of the members is like, ugh, not feeling it that day. And the biggest concern that my friends were like, you're going to go remote? Like, aren't you going to be so lonely? And to be fair, I have an office in a co-working space, so I do have access to people, should I wish to have access to people, which is good. But, and we do travel to New York to see the product team every quarter, and we do meet each other in Paris every couple of months. But honestly, like the minute I put on my headphones, I'm just like, poof, and I'm like in this like virtual space, and I'm in a conversation with my colleagues all day. So just, yeah, maybe I'm physically alone, but far from lonely. And then, for those of you who might think like this sounds pretty intimidating, it's actually not scary at all. I was really terrified of trying it. I was afraid of being horrible at coding somehow, or that people would judge me or something. And it's just not at all what happens. And my team's been great, and I mean, I'm not so bad at coding either, as it turns out. But it just, like, there's nothing scary about it at all. It's actually really fun to code together and to be in a conversation with the code. And my fears just went away immediately on day one. And contrary to what somebody from the outside might think, it's not slow, because somebody might say, hey, like, you've got 3 people working on the same thing. How is that better than 3 people sitting and working on things in parallel? And I'm just going to straight up quote Woody Zuill when I say this. He said that just because 3 people are working on parallel doesn't mean they're getting anything done. And I find that it's true. I don't have any metrics to show you, but I do find that the team is far more effective than if I were off by myself and doing these things by myself. And besides, if you are doing things in parallel, there's like a cost with integration, knowledge sharing, etc. It's not free. But it's not all great either. Things can get pretty passionate when there's no agreement on the team, which is entertaining, of course, but also it can be frustrating at times to disagree, especially with people you spend like your entire days with. And then, when somebody's doing like infrastructure work, it could be boring because they're doing it on their machine. You cannot do it in the shared terminal. You're just watching them do it, so it's like a... And then, the model can break in times of pressure. Towards the end of the demo, we had a team member who had to kind of step up and do like more work a little bit on the side. And that was too bad because it created like bottlenecks later on. He ended up being the sole owner of the code base, and it created problems later on. And then, not 100% of the time, people can be, like not everyone can be at their best all the time. People can be tired, they can be grumpy, they can just disengage that day. And so those dynamics can be tricky to manage as well. So, it's definitely a balancing act. And then something interesting that happened very close to the demo is that we had an interview for a younger developer. And when I say younger, I mean he was like just out of college. He had like a 1.5 years of experience. And I was very hesitant. I was very hesitant to hire this person because I was like, look at our stack, like, we do blockchain, we're so smart, we do all these great things. And I was really surprised. It really took me by surprise how willing and open and eager my colleagues were to hire somebody younger. And honestly, it worked out really, really well because, so he's in New York, and so the way that happens is that we mob together, and then we hand off the work to him. He'll continue it in his afternoons in the US, and then he'll hand it over back to us. And so it's a really great sort of distributed in time and space sort of mob programming that it ended up being that is certainly not everybody can manage, and it worked out great. But honestly, shame on me. Shame on me for thinking to myself at the time, like, we need to hire somebody with more experience, because it ended up not mattering at all. And I think that goes back to the XP value of diversity. And when I look at our team now, I'm on the team, the younger developers on the team, the other teammates, they're older. We have somebody in between. So it's a great mix. And it's really, I really appreciate that. And when we were delivering the demo with the team, we were on the back end, and we were hard at work delivering the API endpoints, so the loan search the loans by party. And the front end, who was in England and who were contractors, they were just sweating away on building the front end, like this, the icons, the windows. You type in, the window opens up, etc. And then what happens? Like, we've all seen this, I think, is that there comes a time where it's time to integrate. Well, the time was very close to the demo, and it was just a big explosion when we had to integrate all of the back end, all of the front end. And we've seen this. And we said, you know what, that's a bad idea. Let's not do that again. And so what we went for now is that when we deliver a feature like searching alone, we're going to deliver it end to end. We're going to deliver the API endpoint that comes with it. It's going to be wired up to the icons, the windows, etc. Toss in the product team in there to specify the requirements as we need them. And when this feature comes out, it's going to be fully integrated. And these are called feature slices. The sad part is that this was more like post-demo that we started to really put this into practice, but we were really trying to hint at that in before. And what's surprising about this? The front end is contractors. Did anybody ever in their life think, oh yeah, let's take the contractors, let's integrate them into our team, let's work with them day to day, and let's teach them about our code base? To me, the way that I saw this happening in the future was that we continue on the back end, they continue on the front end, we're going to have the integration, and that's just how it's going to be. And that's life. It never occurred to me that this was going to be possible in practice. And it never occurred to me that the front-end engineers would even care to come into like the back-end code base and look at it. And you know what? They're doing it. So feature slices, and that ties back to the XP practices of cross-functional teams and continuous delivery. And it's the cross-functional teams that I find really surprising. And so there you have it. You've got the mob, diverse, cross-functional team going at this demo. So let's talk about the code. So the next slide is also a practice. I'm choosing to present it as code, but it's TDD, test-driven development. The red-green refactor, the principle being that when you write a failing test, you don't write any code before you write the failing test. Then you make the test pass, and you iterate until you've delivered the feature that you're working on. And this is our test suite. And there's a lot going on there. But the first thing that should jump out is like, whoa, tests. So many. And the smart contracts, there's like the unit test for the smart contracts. You know, you're going to search your loans and make sure that they're working. Then you're going to have the front-end unit tests, and there's going to be integration for the front-end and the smart contracts. There's something called fitness. Does anybody know fitness? Oh, great. OK, cool. Well, so maybe Cucumber. OK, so fitness is like the OG, and like Cucumber is like a third-generation descendant of this like business requirements as code. And I'll come back to this. And then we had the smart contracts like in the blockchain platform. There's the CLI, and there's the web for user acceptance testing. And there's the pre-merge. On every time you merge something, before it even gets merged into the system, it's going to be all of the unit test suites going to get run. And after you merge, there's going to be the integration, the fitness stuff, the simulation on the system running every time you commit code. And have you ever written a CLI for any system that you've developed? I sure hadn't. So that was very crazy for me to see. But really, the craziest part for me in this is the fitness part. And I'll come back to it in a second, but tests are so obvious, but we don't write them. And now that I've been doing TDD for the past 6 months, I'm not really sure that I can write another line of code without TDD. And we all know they're good, but we don't do it. And so what am I used to? I'm used to saying, OK, I'm going to write this feature. I'm going to add a couple of tests as an afterthought, and I'm just going to ship that. Why? Why do we know the tests are good, and why do we still do that? Now, the 6 month later me is very puzzled at that. And so the fitness. So the business people, the SMEs, the product team, are actually writing code along with us. And how many business people did you ever expect to write your code? Not your code, but code. That's not really how we usually work with business people, right? Business people delivered requirements to us, and maybe some sort of document, and then we just go and we code the rest. This is actually business people coding the system requirements, and it'll look something like this. It'll be a test page. They can go click a button, and there'll be the script part, the query part, that's all fitness stuff. But they'll be hey, I want to define this loan for James Brown, who took it out for 260 months, and then I want to onboard this loan, and then I want to search the loans. So immediately, a business person will have insight into the fact that this piece of functionality in the system works. And so do you remember when I was talking about how the front end and the back end, they were kind of developing out of sync? Why wasn't that a problem? Because we had this. Because we didn't need the front end. The business had insight into the system very early on. And did you guys read about that Accenture Hertz story scandal? Where they're getting sued because they didn't deliver, and they took like a year and a half. And my question was, did you not show anything in that year and a half? Like, did you not ever come back to your client with anything? And this really is a way to eliminate that problem. And I've built products before, also greenfield, and trust and belief, before there was a UI, nobody could see anything. So really, it's a fantastic tool. Look into it. I really recommend it. And so, what are the benefits of TDD? And again, there are so many. But the clear requirements, when you're writing a test for the code that you will be using, it really makes you think about how that code's going to look and how you're going to be invoking it. And it's really easy to stay on track and not get distracted in like 1,000 different directions of what-if cases. You're really focused on the task at hand. And then the backend is so resilient. You can take a machete to the backend. You can just rip it apart with the utmost confidence that you are covered by your tests. And it's a completely different feeling. We did a language protocol upgrade. I don't know how many months it would have taken if we didn't have our tests. It was just one of those like evil upgrades that was going to break everything. And we just had the tests and really got through it very quickly. And then this early visibility into the system, honestly, it blew my mind that this thing exists and how useful it actually is. And the fact that we're asking our business people to write code and they are happy to write it, and they also are thinking differently about their requirements. They're also stating them, I think, a lot more clearly. And then it's a huge time saver. Anybody who tells me I don't have time to write tests, like, well, you know what? Find that time later when you're going to go hunt your defect in production. So in the end, it's a huge time saver. And again, I don't have any metrics for you, but those are easily found. And so these are XP values of feedback into your system, and the practices of test-first programming, cross-functional teams, and real customer involvement into your delivery process. And again, not perfect. The Swiss cheese model is basically, this picture says it better than I could say it. The idea being that you might have many safeguards in place, but they will be sparse, and so something could kind of sneak through. And we've had that happen, so we just enhance our test base. The mark your own interfaces, we're totally violating this principle, because earlier when I was saying we run the unit test on top of the smart contracts, it's a little bit of a lie. We do have to use this blockchain mock, and then we had to mock the mock for performance reasons. So we know. And then after the language upgrade that I just spoke about, the pyramid of tests where mostly has to be unit tests and then integration, and then the other tests kind of smaller and smaller. Well, now we're kind of in a point where all of our tests are integration tests, so we can do better there. But really, what we have is 95% smart contract test coverage. That's a really good number. And so with this kind of team and with the majority of test code, let's talk about some practices. Breadth first, no over-engineering. So the idea being that instead of developing features deeply, develop a sparse system and then start enhancing the features as you get to know your system better. And to take the search example, the 6 months ago me, given this task, I would have been okay, let's set up an external data store, let's ETL, index, reporting, endpoints, whatever, right? I would have over-engineered this feature to deliver a feature. And honestly, that would have been not the smartest move, because at this point, we don't know much about the system. We don't know that we're going to need any of these things. So here's what we did. What we did is we took just a little query using the smart contract DSL, pulled the loans into memory, and searched it in memory. And that was sufficient. Now, I'm not confident that I could have come to a manager who doesn't work with XP, and I could have given that, and they would have accepted that as something that was delivered either. But it was we needed a demo. We needed a slice of a working system. We needed to search by party. There was really no need to do much more than that. And I don't know if that is striking to any of you, but I'm still learning to accept this. That when somebody asks me to deliver a feature, I'm not gonna go away and over-engineer it. I'm just gonna take and deliver the simplest thing possible. And this goes back to the XP value of simplicity and the practices of baby steps and incremental design. And it's sort of kind of intuitive, right? Because then we would add, search them by party, then we would search them by investors, search them by address, and add them in increments as we need them as we go. Evergreen trunk. So remember I mentioned that we run the unit test before we merge into trunk. So nothing that doesn't pass any tests gets in. And the idea being is that really, that means that there's no ceremony with trunk. It is deployable at any time. Just grab it and go. And it goes to the XP practices. So there's this idea of unbreakable build. To be honest, I'm not sure if it's an XP term or if it came later, but it's definitely in the lingo. And then also this idea of how do we develop features? What are the mechanics of that? We're going to go on GitHub, we're going to check out a branch, we're going to develop our feature, then we're going to spend time merging it in. Right, we've all done this. The idea of this is that there's going to be a single code base, no divergence in the code base. So you don't pay the cost of integrating your code back into trunk. And the idea of unbreakable build is that, have we all seen this, where somebody commits something, and now everybody's sitting around because the build is broken, and then we have to wait for them to fix it? This prevents that. The build is always green. And then so the other practices is incremental deployment, continuous integration, 10-minute build, again, going back to the feedback part. This is a recent achievement for us. But the problem for us is that our contractors in England sometimes do like to do code reviews, and they do want to use GitHub. Our setup is not friendly for that, so that's been a bit of we've had to dance around that a bit. And then the user story scenarios. We had these 4 large storylines that consisted of multiple features. What were we asked to do? We were asked to deliver a demo, a working slice of a system, and basically something that the business could take and demo at the banks, et cetera. And so coming back to the search example, what that was part of, it was part of this bigger story. A servicer receives a check. They don't know where it came from. They search the loans. They then find the loan, they attach the check, they apply a payment, et cetera. So they're showing this whole story. And what was absolutely crucial and critical to the delivery was that we had this negotiated scope contract. So search can be a lot of things. It can be a search by a ton of fields, you can have fuzzy search, et cetera. It can go on extensively. And so we had some features that were must-have for this scenario to work. We had some features that were nice to have, and as we worked, we had an understanding and agreement with the product team that not all of these were going to be delivered potentially. There would be the core, and then we would, as we had time, we would add these features incrementally. And I forget exactly what it ended up being, but the fact that we were able to play with the cursor on the scope, and in the end have the working system that we were asked to do, was pretty central to that. And then, we had these milestones, the 3 milestones in the demo. So all that ties back into the XP practices of stories, weekly and quarterly cycles, and this negotiated scope contract, which I hadn't really seen before that much. And then something that's worth to mention, it's not XP, but I found it really surprising, is that my team, for some reason, has this aversion to project management tools. They absolutely hate Jira. And I guess they managed to convince me over time that yes, Jira takes time to, there's somebody setting it up and administering it, and eventually it's a whole team running Jira. Okay, fine. So we're just using GitHub issues, very light. And we have a no tech debt policy. And the idea being is, how do you deal with tech debt? You don't let it accumulate. If you see something that needs to be fixed, you fix it right there. So far it's worked. Okay. We'll see if that could be sustained in the long run. I honestly don't know. And there you have it. With this type of team, with this test coverage and code, with all of these simple design, evergreen trunk, user stories, no tech, debt, with all these practices, we delivered. Check. we delivered the demo. Moreover, we delivered it on time. Is anybody else having a heart attack when they hear that? Did anybody ever deliver any software on time? I sure haven't. And honestly, I thought it was kind of property of software, that it was supposed to be late. So whenever we delivered this on time, that was a huge surprise for me. And it was no stress. I mean, towards the end, yeah, like things got a little tense, but honestly, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this like graphic of like this guy like in a hospital gown with like an IV, and he's like, but at least I delivered my code. Has anybody ever seen this? To me, this is what a deadline means. Like somebody who's like barely alive because they've like made their code deadline. This is not it at all. There was no stress, it was just normal days. Really, business as usual. And then it was like no celebration of delivery because, you know, when we delivered the demo, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish, this is like the one time I wish we all were like geographically together because I'd love to go have a beer to celebrate. And I got shot down. They were like, no, like you should not want to celebrate because this should be continuous delivery and this should be like normal. So there's nothing to celebrate. I thought that was surprising. And so, you know, it looks like XP actually works. Despite it being so rare, it looks like it works. Now, hold on a second, because, you know, if you've got like light code base, light infra, you know, write some new features, sure, 3 months, okay, that works in that setting. But here's the thing, and I know that I've been like really excited about XP, but I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna take off my rose-colored glasses off, and I'm gonna say that we actually have some challenges in front of us that I don't know how we're gonna solve. It's not obvious to me. And the challenge is scaling the whole thing. We know we have a big team now. We're now working with the front-end team members as well, right, together in the mobs. And the product team and everything. And so we have this like multi-mob thing going. Definitely needs polishing at this time. Don't really know how that's gonna work out. We're trying it. And then, you know, continuous delivery is easy when you don't have clients, right? So, well, what's gonna happen once we have clients? I'd be really curious to find out. And then, you know, the building upon existing features, it's really easy. It's easier, I think, to write a feature from scratch. But now that we have the little sparse system in place, now we have to flesh them out more. We have to develop upon what we already built. What is that gonna look like? I don't know. And then the edge cases, we didn't build for any edge cases. The TDD kept us really focused on the scenarios that we wanted to build. So if anybody went into the system and like typed in some stuff, they could probably break it. So, you know, we have to kind of account for all of that. How will we be doing that systematically? I'm not sure, right? And so this is gonna be like our post-demo world. And my point is that I wanna see MVP with XP. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. So maybe like next year, I'll give you guys an update on how all of that went. And then just the disclaimer here that this is not everything that we do, even though I gave you like a lot of stuff. And this is not everything that XP does either. So if you're interested, there's more to it. But otherwise, welcome to the world of XP. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Please. Sure.
So my first question is, can you just describe a little bit more how the front end and the back end are mobbing? Like, front end is literally watching and participating in back end?
So yes, how messily at the moment. It's very much, we're just trying it out to see what works. And what it ends up being currently in practice, that we have the integration piece. And so that's where we manage to collaborate the most. But really, the mechanics are the same. They will get into a Zoom session with us, and we'll develop an endpoint, and they'll follow along and maybe even participate. Then the integration point will really try to get through together. And then whenever there's like very specific styling issues, then they tend to just do it kind of on their own. And I don't know, not everybody on our team is super interested in like doing CSS either. You see, so we try to kind of do as much as we can together, but really in that same mob format.
And And then my other question was about how you said that some of the front-end people wanted GitHub reviews, but because you guys are pairing together, I guess you're not really doing that. So what is the way around?
Actually, excuse me. So what I meant to say was that we have this like the whole integration system set up that kind of bypasses GitHub, and so the continuous integration goes elsewhere, and then GitHub gets like a copy of that, and so that's why that means that they cannot take in GitHub, take the branch, then merge the branch and merge it in. It's really a flaw in like the setup that we have, and so what they end up doing is they end up going through the code review process on GitHub up until the point of the merge, and then they'll go back on their machine and they'll merge it that way. Nah, not great. Yeah. Thank you.
I know you know, but for the people in the room, I work at an XP shop as well. So I was just curious, you said that you have a developer in New York who is in a different time zone.
Yes.
So we don't have any other people in other time zones because we found it was too hard to align. If someone finishes working when everyone else is asleep, they can't hand off properly, so there's no way to actually complete that circle. So I was wondering, I'd like to hear more about how you guys do it.
Actually, we use a tool. It's just like a wiki, and we've all taken to a habit to have this be like our brain dump as we work through issues. We've become very disciplined about keeping a very detailed log about what we're working on that day. And then there is the overlap, you know? So the overlap is the chance to sync up, kind of get the ball rolling, and then, you know, we'll come back the next day and we will find sort of like the brain dump of everything that was happening. And usually it's sufficient for the breadcrumbs to really, the team is really disciplined at that. And it's in the interest of total transparency of what we're doing also for everyone involved. Anybody else? Yes?
Thank you for your talk. Could you explain us a little bit more about the tools that you used to do mob programming? For example,
Sure.
which kind of IDE or?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank
so
you.
it's actually very. I'm so hope. Please don't be offended if you're a fan. I would say it's pretty old school. Like, it's just a shared terminal, and it's just Spacemacs. And Spacemac is like a VI and Emacs bindings in one. So, so you don't have to choose. You have them both.
And so how about the debug? It was easy to debug?
Yeah, so, and excuse me, let me just, so now that we're talking with, now we're working with front-end more, we're trying to leverage a little bit more VS Code live share as well. But for the debugging part, honestly, in our world, because of the constraints of the smart contracts themselves, we have to resort to like, between print and PDB, honestly, and all of that can happen. And then logs, etc. You know, nothing sophisticated in that respect.
Thank you very much for your talk.
Sure.
I had a question about the TDD style that you used. Would it be like outside in, or would you start, like what kind of, when you have the business who write the Cucumber thing, how did you decide as a mob to start with one style of TDD?
So the cucumber thing is a part of it, and how did we? Do you mean like how did we choose that part, or?
Yeah, I mean, do you start like with all your tests being red, for example, and trying to move from one use case to another one until everything goes green? Or do you write one test until it gets green, then you move to the next one?
I see what you mean. So ideally, the best case scenario that we really love when that happens is we start with fitness. We read the requirement from there. Fitness will be red. So we then understand that we need to, take it to the back end. We'll write the unit test enough to get that part of fitness green, and then we'll move on. So really, what we're doing is we're implementing the scenario described by business on that page.
Outside in design.
Excuse me?
Outside in TDD outside in.
Is that what that's called? I don't know.
I have a question on what's the best size mob you've found?
Good question. I'd say, honestly, I think 3 to 4 because 2 is pairing, but honestly, 3 is good because there's more movement, there's more brain power, it's a little more dynamic. 4 is okay. Once it gets more than that, there's somebody hanging back and not paying attention, not engaged. So I would say 3 to 4.
Subsidiary question. The guy that works in the US, how does he feel part of the mob if he's on one time zone and, well, he's only got this small gap of time where he's working with you? Does he really feel part of the mob, or does he feel next to the mob?
I honestly think he does feel part of the mob. And I think that's where the coming in person helps a lot, because the face-to-face time helps to establish like a rapport with the person, and then it's much easier to take it from there. And then we do end up mobbing together. There is that overlap. And there is this communication in written form that happens after. So really, we are in constant communication. I think he feels like a part of the mob. If he doesn't, I really hope he lets us know soon. I'll ask him on Monday. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much.